What makes something funny? Why do we sometimes laugh uncontrollably at a joke or find ourselves amused by a seemingly random moment? To understand humour, we need to look at what triggers it in the first place. Laughter, at its core, is a reaction to the unexpected, the exaggerated, or the absurd. However, these elements alone aren't enough to make something truly funny. This is where the benign violation theory comes into play. The benign violation theory, developed by researchers at the Humour Research Lab, explains that humour arises when three specific conditions are met. First, there must be a violation. In the context of humour, a violation means something disrupts or threatens a person's understanding of how the world should work. This could involve breaking a social norm, challenging a logical expectation, or acting in an unusual way. For example, slipping on a banana peel is a physical violation because it disrupts our expectations of normal movement. The second condition is that the violation must be benign, meaning it's perceived as safe or harmless. If the violation feels too severe or threatening, it is unlikely to be funny. Using the same banana peel example, if someone falls but appears unharmed, it's funny because the situation is harmless. If they're seriously injured, it ceases to be humorous. The third condition is that both of these elements, violation and benignness, must occur simultaneously. If a violation isn't benign, it will likely cause discomfort or alarm rather than laughter. Conversely, if a situation is too benign and lacks any sense of violation, it becomes dull or uninteresting. Humour exists in the balance between these two extremes, where something is just unexpected enough to catch us off guard but still feels safe. To illustrate how these elements interact, imagine a scenario. If a stranger walks up to you on the street and starts tickling you, your immediate reaction would likely be confusion, discomfort, or even fear. This is a violation, but it doesn't feel benign because the person is a stranger, and their actions breach your sense of personal safety. Now consider the same scenario, but the person tickling you is your best friend. Suddenly the situation feels harmless, even if it's still a violation of personal space. The humour lies in the combination of the unexpected act and the benign context provided by the friendship. Different types of violations can evoke laughter, including physical, cultural, logical, and moral breaches. Physical violations, such as slapstick comedy, often involve minor injuries or clumsy accidents, but only when they're clearly harmless. Logical violations challenge reason or expectations, like a joke that subverts a familiar pattern. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. The punchline works because it surprises the audience with an unexpected meaning. Cultural and moral violations also play a role, but they are more subjective. Jokes about cultural stereotypes or taboo topics may resonate with one audience while offending another. The key to humour in these cases is ensuring the audience perceives the context as benign. At the heart of humour lies the concept of a violation. A violation, in the context of humour, is anything that disrupts what we consider normal or expected. It challenges our perceptions of how the world should operate, creating a moment of tension or surprise. However, for humour to work, the violation must remain within a safe boundary, what humour theorists call benign. But what exactly is a violation, and how does it function in different contexts? Violations can take many forms, ranging from physical mishaps to cultural faux pas or logical absurdities. A violation occurs whenever there's a break from the ordinary, a challenge to the expected order of things. For example, imagine a person walking confidently down a sidewalk, only to trip over nothing and stumble awkwardly. This is a physical violation of the norm. Walking is supposed to be smooth and uninterrupted. The unexpected break in expectation creates the potential for humour, provided the situation remains benign. Like if the person recovers with a sheepish grin instead of getting hurt. Physical violations are among the most straightforward examples of this concept. Slapstick comedy thrives on these types of violations, such as someone slipping on a banana peel or getting hit with a harmless cream pie. The humour works because the audience recognises the act as disruptive, but ultimately harmless. In other words, and the violation feels safe because it is temporary and inconsequential. Cultural violations, on the other hand, operate on shared beliefs or customs. These occur when someone breaks a social norm or challenges a widely held expectation. For instance, imagine attending a formal dinner party where someone loudly slurps their soup. This behaviour violates the cultural expectation of refined manners, which might make it funny, depending on the audience. Humour in cultural violations often depends on the context and the relationship between the people involved. Among close friends, a breach of etiquette might provoke laughter, but in a formal setting, it could lead to discomfort instead. Logical violations disrupt patterns of reasoning or play with expectations. These are common in wordplay and puns. Take, for example, the joke, "Why can't your nose be 12 inches long? Because then it would be a foot." This joke works because it breaks logical expectations. The audience initially considers the physical possibility of a long nose before the punchline twists the meaning of foot to refer to a unit of measurement. The humour comes from the unexpected shift in logic. Moral violations are another category, often found in dark or edgy humour. These jokes involve subjects that might be considered taboo or offensive, such as death or crime. Whether they're funny depends heavily on the audience's perception of the violation as benign. For example, jokes about the Titanic sinking may provoke laughter today because the event feels distant and impersonal. However, the same joke told immediately after the tragedy would likely have been met with outrage or sorrow. The key to understanding violations is recognising that their impact varies depending on the audience and the situation. A joke that violates one group's norms might fall flat, or even offend another group. For instance, a cultural stereotype used in humour might resonate with an audience that shares that cultural background, but alienate those who do not. The secret to a good joke lies in making a violation feel safe. While violations challenge norms or expectations, they only become funny when they are perceived as benign, harmless, or inconsequential. Striking this balance is essential, but it's not always straightforward. What makes one person laugh may make another uncomfortable, so understanding how to soften a violation is key to crafting humour that resonates. There are several strategies to make a violation benign. The first method is subtle sarcasm. Sarcasm works by implying a violation without fully committing to it. For instance, if someone says, "Sure, I love waiting in line for hours," the humour comes from the clear contrast between the statement and reality. The violation is benign because it's implied rather than directly stated. This technique allows the audience to recognise the exaggeration without feeling threatened or offended. Another effective method is creating psychological distance. This can be done by removing the audience emotionally, geographically, or temporally from the subject of the joke. For example, jokes about historical events like the Titanic sinking often provoke laughter today because the tragedy feels distant in time. The psychological distance reduces the emotional weight of the violation, making it easier to perceive as benign. Similarly, people often joke about personal hardships, like breakups, after enough time has passed for the pain to fade. This phenomenon is captured in the saying, "Comedy equals tragedy plus time." Psychological distance can also be achieved through physical or geographic separation. People are more likely to laugh at events that happen far away, or to others they don't know personally. For example, a joke about bad weather in another city might elicit laughs, while the same joke about one's own city might feel more irritating than funny if the audience is currently experiencing it. A third strategy is providing an alternative explanation for the violation that reframes it as harmless. This is often seen in physical humour, such as tickling. Tickling is technically a violation because it mimics an attack on personal space. However, it's perceived as benign because the intent behind it is playful, not harmful. Similarly, in a joke, an absurd explanation can turn a potentially offensive setup into something lighthearted. For instance, if someone says, "I didn't lose the game, I just gave the other team a confidence boost," the humour comes from reframing failure as generosity. Another example of providing an alternative explanation is when humour intentionally exaggerates a violation to the point of absurdity. For instance, a joke about someone eating an impossibly large amount of food, like he ate a burger so big they had to forklift it to his table, works because the exaggerated imagery makes it clear that the violation is playful and not to be taken seriously. The balance between violation and benignness is delicate, and it can easily tip in one direction or the other. If a joke is too mild, it becomes boring because the violation is non-existent. On the other hand, if the violation feels too severe, it ceases to be funny and becomes offensive or distressing. This is why skilled comedians carefully gauge their audience's tolerance and expectations, adjusting their delivery to ensure the violation remains within safe boundaries. Humour is deeply subjective. What makes one person laugh hysterically might leave another person completely unamused or even offended. This variability is why understanding your audience is critical when trying to be funny. A joke's success often depends not just on its content, but on how well it aligns with the perspectives, experiences, and sensitivities of the people hearing it. Knowing your audience ensures that your humour feels relatable and safe, making the violation benign rather than alienating. The first step to understanding your audience is recognizing that humour isn't universal. People have different backgrounds, beliefs, and life experiences that shape what they find funny. For instance, a joke that works with your close friends might fall flat with your parents or co-workers. This disparity occurs because humour is rooted in context. Your friends likely share inside jokes, cultural references, or a willingness to push boundaries, whereas other groups might require more careful navigation of norms and expectations. Consider this scenario. You're joking with a group of friends who all share a love for dark humour. You might crack a joke about a taboo subject, and it lands perfectly because the group shares a mutual understanding of the context and intent. Now imagine telling the same joke at a formal family gathering. It's likely to be met with awkward silence or disapproval because the family setting doesn't align with the tone or content of the joke. This example highlights how humour is not just about the words, but also about the environment and the shared expectations of the group. One way to gauge your audience is to observe their behaviour and preferences. Pay attention to the types of humour they respond to in conversations or media. Do they laugh at sarcasm, enjoy slapstick comedy, or appreciate clever wordplay? If you're interacting with someone new, start with safer, more universal humour before testing boundaries. For instance, light observational jokes about everyday situations, like waiting in long lines or dealing with bad weather, are less likely to offend and can help you establish a rapport. Tailoring your humour to the audience also means being mindful of their sensitivities. Humour that challenges norms or pushes boundaries is most effective when the audience feels comfortable with the subject matter. For example, a joke about workplace struggles might resonate with colleagues, but feel irrelevant or awkward in a conversation with people outside that environment. Similarly, jokes involving stereotypes or cultural references require an understanding of how the audience will perceive them. What feels playful to one person might feel like a harmful violation to another. It's also important to note that humour often builds on shared experiences. Inside jokes thrive in groups with a strong sense of connection because they draw on common knowledge or past interactions. In contrast, a joke that relies heavily on obscure references may alienate those who aren't familiar with the context. To keep humour inclusive, aim for references that the majority of your audience can understand. Another strategy for knowing your audience is experimenting with different styles of humour and observing reactions. If a joke flops, it's not a failure but a learning opportunity. For instance, if you try a sarcastic remark and it's met with confusion, it might indicate that the group doesn't favour sarcasm or didn't understand the context. Adjusting your approach based on feedback helps you refine your humour to suit the group's preferences. Crafting a good joke is both an art and a skill. While humour often feels spontaneous, the best jokes share common characteristics that make them effective. To create humour that lands consistently, it's essential to focus on three key elements: brevity, specificity, and the rule of three. These principles not only sharpen your delivery but also maximise the impact of your punchlines. The first and most critical quality of a good joke is brevity. As the saying goes, brevity is the soul of wit. In humour, every word counts. A joke loses its edge if it takes too long to reach the punchline. Long-winded setups dilute the humour by testing the audience's patience and making the punchline less surprising. For example, compare these two setups. The other day I was walking down the street and it was really hot. and I saw a guy selling ice cream and I thought to myself, wow, ice cream would really hit the spot right now. Versus I saw a guy selling ice cream on a yacht or both convey the same information, but the second version is concise and keeps the audience engaged. Brevity doesn't just save time, it builds anticipation for the punchline. By cutting unnecessary details, you ensure the audience's attention remains focused on the humour. The second quality of a great joke is specificity. The more vivid and relatable a joke is, the funnier it becomes. Specific details make a scenario come alive, allowing the audience to visualise the humour more clearly. For instance, instead of saying an old woman crossed the street, you could say, my grandma, wearing her pink fuzzy slippers, crossed the street holding a chihuahua that looked angrier than her. Specificity not only adds colour to the joke, but also makes it more memorable. It's easier to connect with a joke that paints a picture rather than one that feels generic. Specificity also allows jokes to feel personalised and tailored to the moment. For example, a joke about someone spilling coffee at work becomes funnier when you mention the specific co-worker and their unique reaction. Dave spilled coffee on his tie and spent 5 minutes trying to clean it with a donut napkin. The napkin gave up before Dave did. These details elevate the humour because they create a vivid, relatable image. The third key principle is the rule of three. This classic comedy technique relies on patterns and surprise. The rule of three works by listing two expected items, creating a pattern, and then breaking it with something unexpected. For example, I packed my bag for the trip with snacks, a flashlight, and my neighbour's cat. The first two items establish a normal pattern, and the third item disrupts it, creating humour through surprise. The rule of three is effective because it plays with the audience's expectations. After hearing the first two items, they unconsciously predict that the third will follow the same logic. When it doesn't, the unexpected twist triggers laughter. The rule of three is versatile and can be adapted to various types of humour. It works in observational jokes, one-liners, and even longer comedic narratives. For instance, I went to the gym to work out, get healthy, and cry in the corner after 10 minutes. The humour comes from the sudden shift from a motivational tone to self-deprecation, catching the audience off guard. One of the most misunderstood aspects of humour is the importance of failure. While it's natural to focus on making others laugh, the process of becoming funnier involves a lot of trial and error. Making bad jokes is not just inevitable, it's essential for improving your sense of humour. The ability to fail, reflect, and learn from your mistakes is what ultimately allows you to develop comedic timing, creativity, and confidence. This process is rooted in the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and grow through experience. When you tell a joke that doesn't land, it's easy to feel embarrassed or discouraged. However, neuroscience tells us that failure is an essential part of learning. Neuroplasticity, the brain's mechanism for forming new connections, is activated most effectively when you encounter challenges or mistakes. In other words, when you tell a bad joke, your brain is forced to analyse what went wrong and adjust accordingly. This analysis happens both consciously and subconsciously, helping you refine your humour over time. For example, imagine telling a sarcastic joke to a group of friends, only to be met with confused silence. While it might feel awkward in the moment, your brain is actively processing the experience. You might realise that your tone wasn't clear enough, or that the joke was too subtle for the audience. The next time you attempt sarcasm, you'll naturally adjust your delivery, increasing the chances of success. This trial and error process is the foundation of comedic growth. The benefits of failure are amplified when you experiment with different types of humour. By trying a variety of jokes, puns, observational humour, slapstick, or even dark comedy, you can identify which styles resonate with different audiences. Each failed attempt provides valuable feedback, teaching you what works and what doesn't in specific contexts. Over time, this experimentation helps you develop versatility and a deeper understanding of how humour operates. Another reason making bad jokes is crucial is the chemical response it triggers in the brain. When you fail, your brain releases neurotransmitters like norepinephrine, which heighten your focus and awareness. This state of heightened attention makes you more receptive to learning from your mistakes. Interestingly, the actual improvement happens later, during sleep. While you're resting, your brain consolidates the lessons from your failures, strengthening the neural pathways that will guide your future attempts. It's important to approach the process of making bad jokes with the right mindset. Instead of fearing failure, embrace it as an opportunity to grow. Successful comedians often emphasize the importance of bombing on stage during their early careers. They know that each failed performance is a stepping stone toward mastering their craft. Similarly, when you tell a bad joke among friends, view it as a chance to learn, not as a reflection of your abilities. One practical tip is to intentionally push yourself to tell more jokes, even if some of them are likely to fail. For instance, in a casual conversation, try throwing out 5 jokes instead of 1. Statistically, some of them won't land, but the increased volume gives you more opportunities to learn and improve. When a joke succeeds, your brain takes note of what worked, reinforcing the pathways that led to that success. When a joke fails, the contrast sharpens your understanding of why it didn't work. Humour isn't just a skill, it's a journey of trial, error, and growth. And now you've got the tools to start making everyone laugh. Stick around for the next video, where we'll dive into more secrets. Like and subscribe, fellow world creators.